early on, the idea of raising money, it did feel a little bit like the finish line, because you convinced someone that your idea was good enough to invest in, and they gave you money, and now you can cut yourself a paycheck. You can, buy the equipment you need. You can get the space you need, all this stuff. It felt like a win. But that is just in the story of your company, like that's just the point where the rising action begins. That's all it is. That the work is still ahead of you. The thing that's always in the back of my mind when it comes to investment or capital or anything is to avoid that whole greater fool theory of investing. For every dollar you take, in my mind, that dollar needs to somehow bring in $1.30 to $1.40. So if this whole thing where you go, we're going to do a pre-seed round, or we're going to do a seed round, pre-revenue round, and then we'll do a Series A, and then we'll do a Series B, and then we'll do a Series C. Well, at what point are you going to stop raising money and just be in revenue and be self-generating cash flow? It doesn't make sense to me unless you are setting up a chip, a semiconductor.
Well, there's a lot
foundry.
of technologies that take a long time to get commercialized, right?
But I think that a lot of companies see that pathway and they go, I've had conversations with startups who are trying to make physical hard goods that are not that intense to make. And they're talking about when they do their Series C. And it's something that, in my opinion, is not needed, especially because, again, if you take $1, you need to make $1.30 with it in order to get that return at some point.
Well, also, I think I'm not going to say most people are doing it just to make money and kind of run away. I think most people aren't discerning enough or don't understand. They look at a model and say that model must work for every business. And we know we have metal products, we have plastic products, we have products that are in cardboard, right? They're all different universes, even though it's still a hard good, right?
Yep.
That's with business models, right? That model of building a chip plant that you have to keep raising money for year over year, or new technologies. Like we do a lot in hydrogen, right? Yeah. And we've had hydrogen people on our podcast.
Yeah.
That's a long tail of technology for a lot of reasons.
Yep.
Okay, that's a different story than I'm building a service company. And we've talked to service companies trying to come through the incubator, which they don't fit because we don't do service here. But they're trying to raise money for a service business that you could literally get some equipment for maybe a few $1,000s and start on your own.
Yeah.
But they want to raise money.
Yeah. And I think part of it is because it's like this sexy thing. And I think a lot of the times it seems like, I can't speak for anyone else. I can speak for myself. Early on, the idea of raising money, it did feel a little bit like the finish line, because you convinced someone that your idea was good enough to invest in, and they gave you money, and now you can cut yourself a paycheck. You can, buy the equipment you need. You can get the space you need, all this stuff. It felt like a win. But that is just in the story of your company, like that's just the point where the rising action begins. That's all it is. That the work is still ahead of you, and I think that's some of because you see the Googles and a lot of these things where they get investors or you get funding. What's the first thing we're going to do? We're going to build a campus. We're going to build a building with a lot of windows with no R factor, and it's going to be a nightmare to heat and cool, and it's going to be really sexy though. All right, well, now you have a $40 million building. What are you doing with it? You took $40 million, you took $60 million. How are you now going to make $100 million with that? That building better be paying off per square foot.
Yeah, and I think the difference in our mindset is always first check, first client is the sexiest because somebody's paying me to do what I want to do, right? The investment in our mind is always later when we've already validated our market space. And then the conversation is really about partnerships, not begging. Because I think people also try to raise money early because they're begging. They need money to continue, right? Some of the things that, you read books and like, go all in. Our first advice to somebody who wants to start a business is keep your day job.
Yeah.
Because the moment you stop that job, all you think about is the money you're not making.
Yep.
You're not even thinking about your new business. You are thinking about, I have no money. Yep. So figure out time. Going back to a busy podcast we did a few hours ago, right? think about it as time blocking and hitting certain numbers first, and take that leap as late as possible. Because if you're just raising money so you can pay yourself, most investors aren't going to do that.
Yeah. And as well, they shouldn't. You know, like if you're going to be in development for another 5 years, again, is the runway equivalent to what the takeoff is going to be? If you got 5 years of runway and your burn rate is $1 million a year and your projected market is $200,000 a year, doesn't really make a ton of sense.
We'll just do the math.
Yeah.
25 years to pay it back.
Yeah. Follow
with
the numbers.
no profit.
Yeah. But
see how fast I did that, man?
Yeah, you're good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm probably totally wrong on the math.
I bought it.
You bought it. I sold it well.